Hi there. What does this look like to you? A roller coaster, right? What this is your moods while you're at work. There's your mood right at the bottom, at a low, what I call ONIM, which is, oh no, it's Monday. And then you work your way through the week. Finally, your mood gets to a high because it's Friday. Thank God it's Friday, TGIF. And then it starts to go downhill again. And so, week after week after week after week, the same thing repeats. Hi there, if you are one of those people who can identify with that picture I just showed you, then you might want to listen to this video in full. Because I'm going to talk about mid-career blues. Let's say a typical career is 40 years, 4 decades. Okay, the first decade in the 20s, all you're interested in is getting a job and earning some money. So you don't think too much about what kind of job it is. And things like job satisfaction don't figure in your priorities. Then you get to the second quarter, which is your 30s. That's when typically people take on more responsibilities. So there could be a relationship, a marriage, children, a mortgage, all that kind of stuff. So they tend to take center stage in a person's life. And again, there's not that much thought being given to exactly what you're doing for a career because it's meeting the purpose, the financial purpose. Then we get into the third quarter, typically the 40s. And that's when thoughts start coming into the head. Am I enjoying this? Is this all there is to it? So you start looking ahead. You've got another 20 years of work left in your career, and you think, wow, am I just going to be doing the same thing for the next 20 years? So, you could be questioning yourself. Is this the right job, the right career for me? If any of these questions apply to you and you can feel a kind of resonance to it, then maybe you're suffering from mid-career blues. So let's see what it is and what it's not. Let's first see what it's not. If you've had a particularly bad day at work, maybe it's been extraordinarily busy. Maybe you've had some really unhappy customers. Maybe you had a meeting that went pretty badly for you. So that's one bad day at work. That doesn't qualify as mid-career blues because that's a one-off. When you go back to work the next day, things are fine. Or maybe it's just been a day where you feel that you're caught up in a lousy project. You might be having a few days of thinking, oh, this is a crappy project, man. I just can't wait for it to finish. But once the project is over, your life gets back on an even keel. So that's not mid-career blues either. What I mean by mid-career blues is when you actually hate going into work every day or most days. You have to drag yourself into work screaming and kicking. And you can't wait for the day to end. So you might be suffering from the oh no, it's Monday to thank God it's Friday roller coaster of emotions. And if you're feeling that over an extended period of time, then you might be suffering mid-career blues. So if you can relate to what I'm saying in terms of really hating your job to an extent where you wish you could just be without it, in some way you could escape. So you're looking for an escape from your daily work. Then let's look at how you can tackle these mid-career blues. So I've got a few tips here. So let's begin with the first one. The first one is self-reflection. You've got to really first figure out what is it about your job that you hate so much. Is it that there's too much work? Is it that you feel you're doing an unfair amount of work and the others are not carrying the weight? Is it that you've been unfortunate to have a really nasty boss? The boss from hell? Or is it that the people you work with, you don't particularly enjoy that? Could be your customers, could be your contractors, could be your suppliers, could be your colleagues. And you have to spend 8 hours a day at least with all of them, and that's driving you crazy. Or is it the company culture itself? A company culture is something that permeates the entire company, regardless of what part of the hierarchy they're in. Right from the lowest rung of the ladder to the highest rung of the ladder, there might be certain things that put you off. Examples could be a blame culture. Always trying to blame the other person, not taking responsibility culture, a backbiting and bitching culture, a victimization culture, a witch hunt culture. Any of this could all be cultures that companies could be carrying with them, and you might be in the midst of it. You see it all around you and you feel you don't belong. So it's very important to do the self-review to determine what is it that you actually hate about your job. And the thing is, when we get to this mid-career stage, we generally have a lot of commitments. We might have family commitments, we might have mortgages that we are paying, bills to pay, and so on. So it's not easy to just get up and walk out. However much you might want to do it, you just can't. You can't just one day say, you know what, I don't like working here, goodbye folks, I'm gone. Because there are commitments and there are restrictions in terms of limitations in terms of what you can and cannot do. It's not like in your 20s when you could just go and do anything really. But here you might be limited by where you can work geographically. You may not be able to just pull up stumps and move somewhere else. Could be health concerns. There may be certain things related to your health that don't permit you to do certain physical work. So there are limitations, no doubt about it. So when you do your self-review, you need to work out what these limitations are too. But try and see those limitations in a positive light, because once you start seeing them in a negative light, then it can leave you feeling very deflated. So when I say in a positive light, what I mean is that sometimes it's good that you don't have that many choices. And remember how, when you go into maybe buy biscuits or chocolates or something and you walk into a supermarket, you don't have anything specific in mind, but when you go there, You've got hundreds of varieties, and it confuses the crap out of you because you're there and you're thinking, man, all I wanted was biscuits or chocolates, and there's just so many. I don't know what to pick. So sometimes too much choice can be a hindrance. So this particular stage of your life, when it comes to your career, the fact that you don't have that many choices means you can hone in on exactly what your options are. So try and look at it in that light, but still work on it. Find out what are those limitations. So that's step number one, or tip number one. The other tip I would say is try and make small changes within your existing routine or existing setup. Change things up a little bit. Maybe there's a new project that you can take on within the company. I'll give you an example. In one of my jobs, when I was feeling this mid-career blues, the company was installing a new ERP system. So basically, it's that computer system where every single process is done on that particular software. And I don't have a software background, but I volunteered to get on the steering committee for implementing that particular ERP system. And what it did for me is it broke up my monotony. I was spending a lot of time learning new things, and also, as part of the steering committee, it was taking me away from my regular, boring, dreary work, which I could delegate to someone else because they knew that I was doing this important job. And it helped me break out of that phase where I was questioning, what the hell am I doing here? So that's one option you could look at. You could look at probably changing a branch, moving to another branch perhaps, or moving to another department. Maybe if you're in internal sales, you could look at doing external sales and so on. Or you could try and change a shift if you're in shift work. Sometimes when you move from one shift to another, there are subtle changes in your work routines that can freshen up your overall work situation that you're in. The third tip I have is learn new things. Now, this for me is something that's very essential because we need to keep feeding our brain, and the fuel for our brain is new learning. So maybe find some challenge within your workplace that you can try and solve. One example I can give is in one of my earlier jobs, I found that there were a lot of processes that weren't documented. So all the information was in here for the employees. So I thought, why not we set up an SOP system, so a standard operating procedure system, which is generally done for machinery. Why can't we do it for our day-to-day processing? So I started working on some SOPs, which gave me a lot of new ideas. It freshened up my thought process, and it helped me make my job just that little bit more interesting. The fourth tip I would have is look for meaning in your job beyond the obvious. Often we're just so immersed in our day-to-day work that we don't see the bigger picture. An example could be if you're in sales and you are selling a particular product. Try and think about where that product is being used. Maybe make a few customer visits to see your product actually being used in their application. It just gives you a new perspective for what you're doing, your work, instead of just being a rigmarole for you on a daily basis. You might be able to see a new side to it. Also, it will build your relationship with your customers. The fifth tip is to do with your career and your life. Don't let your career define who you are. We often identify with our jobs so much that we can't separate the two, and that drags us down. On the one hand, we don't like our job, but on the other hand, we can't imagine our life without it because the two of them are so closely packed together. So, work on improving your personal life by making sure that you allocate some time for that. And this phrase work life balance is, overused, it's cliched, I know that, but it's important. And finally, I would say, if all these tips don't work for you and you still hate your job and you still feel that you have to drag yourself into work and you're looking for a way to break out of the rut, then maybe it's time for a career change. And a career change can sound scary, when you're more mature, when you're in your 40s perhaps or 50s. It can sound scary because all along, we've been doing a certain kind of work. We've got certain skills that we've gained along the way through our work experience, and the thought of doing something completely different can be very scary. But what I'll say to you, if you're one of those people in that situation, is that if I can do it at the age of 56, you definitely can do it. It is possible. What it requires is a little bit of thinking differently, starting to believe differently, and then achieving differently. If you need any more help with this, if you'd like to discuss further, my contact details are given below. So do get in touch with me. I've been in the situation that you might be going through, but I've come through it. So we talk of the light at the end of the tunnel. You've got to keep walking until you see it and then believe that it is actually the outside that you're seeing and not the light of another train coming to run you over. And that requires confidence. So if you do need any help, get in touch with me and let's see what we can do. Thank you. Bye bye.